Today, we're rethinking retirement. For most people, the one thing they worry about is money. Have I saved enough? Can I afford to stop working? When can I access my super? But what if that's the wrong place to start? Today's guest has spent decades working in financial services. Brad Fox believes retirement is a phase of life, one that raises big questions about identity, purpose, time, and meaning. And while money matters, the mindset matters more. That's today on Money and a Good Life. Hello, my name is Stephanie Coombs and I'm here with the one and only, the singular Ryan Watson. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Steph. How are you? And some people might say that's a good thing.
Yes,
broke the mould, right?
Well, let's find out if that's a good thing, because I'm bringing in one of your mates.
We are. We're talking mindset and retirement.
We
Love
are.
it.
With the wonderful Brad Fox. He's the Managing Director of Smart Brave Consulting, Chairman of Tribeca Financial, and one of the most respected voices in Australia's financial services industry, and has also known our friend Ryan for a long time. Is it good that he's a one and only?
Oh, it's good that we're all unique, especially Ryan.
You sound like a politician.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a very political answer.
Yeah.
Now, Brad, we're talking about something that is going to happen to all of us if we're lucky, which is retirement, and it's such a big issue. And we really think about this in terms of money, but it's not just about money, is it? It's a bit deeper than that. It's about your lifestyle and what you want.
Well, if you live long enough, you're going to retire whether you've got the money or not. So, no, it's not just about the money. The money takes this amazingly large focus when we get to retirement. But the reality is, whether you've got it or not, and whether you've got too much or too little, it's your mindset that governs most what sort of lifestyle you're going to have in retirement and how long you're going to live and how much you're going to enjoy it and all the other things that are much more important than the bank balance.
So we tend to think of retirement as just the moment you stop working. That's it. And then whatever happens next, I don't know how many people actually really think about it, but you stop working and then question mark. What happens when you stop working?
Well, I guess the first thing is if we're going to use that as a definition, there's two ways that you get there. One is a planned, deliberate way. You choose the timing. But then a lot of people get there. In fact, nearly half of people get to retirement without it being their planned time or date, whether that's because of illness, redundancy, family situation occurs. There's a whole bunch of uncertainties that lead you into the same outcome when you're not ready for it.
And can we just sit in that for a second, Brad? Half of people, it's not planned. Half of it, like it's like a switch. Yep. Half of people don't have a plan.
So many people say, Ryan, it's going to be 65, I'm going to retire. But they get made redundant at 62.
Yep.
And that's it. Try and get a new job in your 60s. Not very easy, particularly if you're in a profession rather than perhaps as a skilled labourer.
Yeah.
And how does that hit people who retirement happens to rather than people who choose retirement?
Perhaps it's where it hits first, so it's right between the eyes. You know, it's front and centre. But how does it hit them? Sometimes with relief, to be honest. You know, sometimes with relief, with devastation for some. You know, there's one podcast person in Australia, a lady that focuses on an audience of women in their 50s, and she only started the podcast because at 52 she was made redundant from a career that she'd devoted herself to, had done very well in, but overnight, complete surprise to her, she was out the door and found out that it was very much she was unemployable for the same sorts of roles, the same sorts of salary at that age. And in fact, the same thing happened to one of my brothers, Stephen. He'd served at Telstra since he was 15 years old and at 52 was redundant, out the door. He didn't know what he was going to do.
He reminded me the other day, 37 years of service. I said 25. Yeah. He quickly corrected me. 37.
Yep. 37 years of service and out the door, short notice. Sure, redundancy, had good money.
Yeah, I have to say that'd be a hell of a redundancy.
It was good redundancy, yeah. But see, the things, and this is the questions he went through.
Yeah.
His first question to me was, what am I going to do? Can I afford to retire? So we did the numbers, and sure, the numbers said, Steve, yeah, you can retire, but you're 52.
It's going to be a long time. Yeah.
Right? Are you ready? What are you going to do instead? You know, if we think of someone like that who is a senior executive role, but still most people working full-time, you know, what time do you leave for work in the morning? Let's say it's 7 a.m. Senior role, what time do you get home at night? 7 p.m, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, 60 hours. After dinner and a couple of things at home, what do they then do? They do the reading for the things they missed during the day or the emails or preparing for the next day, 2 hours a night, 4 nights a week, another 8 hours. We're up to 68. What do they do on the weekend? Another 6 or 8 hours of emails, preparation, reading, all those things. They're doing over 70, 75 hours a week. Bang, redundant, retired. You just got back 75 hours a week, Steph. What are you going to do with it?
Right now I have probably about 70 hours a week where I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
So for me, totally fine. But for them, I can understand. Like if you don't have the time, if you're in that sort of high demand position, to cultivate hobbies, secondary interests, you're probably, if you're working those sorts of hours, you might be a bit of a stranger to your own family.
Absolutely.
Can you keep friends up at
Your
that
own
sort of rate?
identity?
Yeah, your own identity.
If 168 hours in a week,
like
almost literally half of your work or your living life is work, your identity trapped.
I would call that, for most people, that would be an existential crisis.
And we've left someone very important out of the discussion.
Who's that?
The partner.
Yes. Oh,
the partner. Now this is true. My dad retired at 56.
Yeah.
He was a chief superintendent of police in Western Australia, and he spent his last 12 months in the job as an acting assistant commissioner. But they made it clear to him, because he was already beyond voluntary retirement age then, was 55, that he was never going to get the top job or be made a permanent assistant commissioner. He'd maxed out his super, which then was a thing called defined benefits. He'd maxed that out through sacrificing income through his working years, and he'd built his own super on the side on top of that from being frugal and excess income. There was no reason for him to stay, so he left at 56. He just made one little mistake. He didn't discuss it with Mum before he resigned and handed his notice in. He comes home from work and he says, "Well, Pat, I resigned today. I'm retiring." And she flew off the handle. "You're not getting under my feet. What do you think you're going to do with all that time? Don't think you're going to be around here and disrupt my life," right? There was no preparation for Mum in this discussion. And Dad thought, well, that was the safest play, because if there was discussion, there just would have been arguments before the decision.
Yeah, okay.
But
That's
the
one way of doing
spouses or the partner or whoever else is in their home life are important stakeholders in the decision, because it's going to impact them too.
And it is funny, like that is something that I've heard echoed in my family and also in other families.
It's
Yeah,
happening
exactly.
in my wife's
It's
family
like,
as well. Retirement was 55 from BHP, and then there's a whole lot of time spent together. I don't think they listen to this podcast, so
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah.
we'll find out at the next family function.
Yeah, that's it. But my mother, who's just autonomously run the household and sort of quite happily doing her own thing, and then just, my father just a little bit underfoot is the way that you could describe it, is underfoot. And obviously this is a few years ago and they get along beautifully, but there's still like suddenly two people who have actually had kind of separate lives are sort of pulled
thrust
in
together. Now, we've had this just recently.
Yeah.
If we think of our broad listener base to this podcast, a lot of them will have been working couples, and of course we had COVID, and if they're in Victoria in particular, they were thrust to working from home and under each other's feet for a substantial amount of time. And now, even years past COVID, people are working from home 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and this disruption has evolved into perhaps some happy coexistence. So maybe this generation's coming through have had a practice run at what the start of retirement's like.
2 lots of 120 days.
Yeah, that would certainly do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of funny, I think, when you've often, as is the case for boomers, you've had like the woman running the household, and then they've been doing that, and then like the
raise
male,
the kids.
Yeah,
Kids
exactly.
have left.
And then
a lot of
suddenly,
time. There's a lot of space.
Yeah, and then they're together, and then suddenly the husband has opinions on how the household is run, and it's like, absolutely not. It's like,
why golf.
I am
That's why golf
CEO of this house.
Steph,
Yeah,
that's why golf is such a great game.
There's
6 hours.
We'll get on to sports pastimes and hobbies in a little while.
Yeah.
But if we go right back to the beginning, what is this definition of retirement? Very bluntly, people place it as the time when they stop working. And really the definition is so much greyer and broader than that. You know, we can take it through that the government's definition of retirement is wrapped up in all the legislation about when you can access super, when you can get retirement benefits from them, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all this government definition or legislative definition. I guess there's a financial definition. It's perhaps the period where you go from spending the money you're earning to spending the money that you saved or accumulated, and we call that deaccumulation. Or let's put it a different way. Perhaps it's the point where you go from being about making money or wanting to become wealthy to making sure you never become poor. So it's this switch from making to don't lose it.
Oh, yes.
Well,
That's it. Yeah. Absolutely. And of course, they're the blunt definitions, but in amongst all that, we've got all the other ones, the grey ones, the part-time consultant, the semi-retirement. We've got the people that replace a paid working life with a full-time volunteer working life. We've got the people that shut down. They have to rest, recover before they reinvent themselves because they're stuffed. They've worked that hard up to the finish line. They're cooked.
And the thing that we see, Foxy, at Tribeca is a lot of people, when they talk retirement, they see it as so finite. But what you're talking about, and you touched on around mindset, it's a next phase, next life stage.
So let's pick that up, right? So we go through a whole bunch of life stages, most of them without really choosing them or being conscious about it. The first is we're an infant, right? We're an unconscious learner. We're just doing what nature gives us, and we're well and truly nurtured and cared for and looked after by others. Then we go through our conscious education phase, all the schooling years and maybe some uni, where we're still kind of looked after by somebody else pretty much, right? And we're just gathering formal knowledge. Then we start working, right? We've got the young adult life. All about experiences, you know, your first 2 or 3 careers, your false starts, first couple of relationships, a bit rocky, false starts, some travel, some of this, right? All about getting experiences. Then we get into the complicated parts of life, right? We go, I'm a grown-up now, and we get a relationship and a mortgage, and we get a career, and we're starting to get serious about life. And, you know, it's still learning, and it's enthusiasm, and it's optimism. And then we get the next stage. This is the kids, the problems, the divorces, got the sack, got the redundant, the business failed.
Aging parents.
Aging parents, yep. So this whole school of hard knocks kind of phase, which is really the one that is the greatest opportunity to make yourself. Then we get into this semi-retirement. Now, people see this differently. Some take it as a proactive planning. What can I do? What's it going to be?
Opportunity around self-actualisation. You
know,
climb Maslow's.
Really upward looking.
Yeah.
Others see it as, when can I hit this finish line? I've had enough. I'm a bit of victim mindset. You know, the world's doing this to me. When can I finish? When is it over? When do I stop? When really it's not a stop. It is just your next start. And I think that's the biggest message about getting ready for retirement is you don't have to determine the date or the timing. But there's a huge opportunity to see it as, what are the things I've been putting off, delaying, not able to do because of all those school of hard knocks things, that now I get the freedom to pick and choose what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and who I'm going to do it with. And
a reset. I think that it's a nice point to actually have a reset and think about it, about what you want to do. Now, that as a task, resetting, who am I, what do I want to do, self-actualization is enormous, right? You're aware of a planning tool that I'm also aware of. I'm interested in this one, Odyssey planning. Now, that's a Stanford invention. Plan?
We'll go with invention.
We'll go invention.
Yeah.
I don't really know what to call it. So talk us through what the Odyssey plan is.
All right. So Stanford University, they put a lot of work into what is a framework people can use as a reset. Now, this is not just about retirement. This is about career resets, life resets, family resets. So it can be used in a multitude of ways. And it basically gets you to pose 3 questions to yourself and work through the thoughts and answers around those. And then to create 3 plans about your life. And what's powerful about this as a tool is it takes us into a place of imagination without consequences. So nothing you dream up, nothing you come up with in the process of Odyssey planning becomes an anchor around your neck or a public declaration of what you're going to be or what you're going to do. it's your tool, or as a couple, it's your tool as a couple. But it's about it's about bringing back the power of imagination that our working life has often knocked out of us.
Yes.
Right? We lose this free thinking and dreaming it up because we're on the track, we're on the career path, we're on the job path.
You got to do the right thing. You're
Blinkers
in the
are on.
and we
Blinkers
start
are on. You can't see. Yeah.
Correct. And we start competing and running races that don't matter. We start competing about where our kids go to school or what our bank balance is or what our car in the carport is versus a neighbour's. We start all these other things that take you away from the power of imagination. The Odyssey planning tools invite you to revisit imagination without consequences.
So if people want to do this, what are the questions that they should be asking themselves?
Well, the first question is, what purpose and meaning do I want my life to have in retirement beyond work? What purpose and meaning do I want my life to have? See, purpose and meaning is what drives us all. It should be the thing that gets us up in the morning, with a smile and a bit of a spark.
The thing you'll literally do for free.
Absolutely.
You want to do more and more, but it actually gives you energy, fills your battery.
Yep. Absolutely. And look, for some people, they get that in their work life and they'll retire saying, I never worked a day in my life, I loved what I did. For other people, work is a means to an end. It provides the income to live a meaning and purpose outside of work. Right? Some do a balance of both. So there's not a right or wrong answer here. But when we're getting towards retirement thinking, what's the meaning or purpose that I want to have in my life that's beyond the thing that I've been paid to do?
And when you say purpose and meaning, you can be like hyper specific. Like, my purpose is to keep a beautiful garden that makes everyone happy and then sell those flowers or something, right? But which is very specific. But you could also go a bit broader than that. Like, my purpose is to connect with people in my community and feel like I'm part of a network every day. That, if you're really hyper specific, you probably kind of already know where you want to go. But if you look at a broader understanding of what makes you happy without attaching careers or things to it, you can get pretty interesting results from that.
Absolutely. And even within a career, if you look at it and look at what parts of the work that you do are the ones that fill your tank, and then look at what beyond work is similar. So my parents, as an example, Dad retired, as I said, at 55. After about a year, he took up lawn bowls, a bit less than a year. Well, actually, the first thing he did, really interesting, the Pope was coming to visit Australia, including Perth, and Dad, as a retired acting assistant commissioner, was asked to head up the security planning for the papal visit to Perth. So that took up the first 8 weeks or so of his retirement.
I was going to say, that's a busy retirement.
Yes, that was the first 8 weeks or so. But beyond that, he then joined the bowling club and, started to play lawn bowls, which he hadn't done before. And, years later, Dad's still alive. He's 96, approaching 97. And recently the bowling club's just had a massive extension built off the back of a 20-year plan that he helped co-author in his early 90s. Still involved and engaged. He's won the Australian Sports Medal for contribution to lawn bowls, rewrote constitutions for God knows how many bowling clubs. And
I think it was like 22 at last count when we just spoke about this a few years ago.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So Dad threw himself into service. Service of others. Mum, at the same time Dad retired, had been working just a part-time job in the haberdashery department at Bowen's, I think it was called, which was bought by Myer later on. But Mum was a great seamstress, so fabrics and materials and all that was her world. When she retired from that, which was after Dad had been retired for about 3 years, Mum had a year or two of doing nothing and was lacking meaning and purpose. So then she volunteered for St Vincent de Paul and helped deliver food parcels to local families in need and those sorts of things, right? In fact, when Mum passed away, which was an unexpected event, we found the raffle ticket money for the St Vincent de Paul current raffle being run 3 layers down in the chest-deep freezer because you couldn't leave it anywhere and get stolen. It wasn't her money. Quite amazing. Different generations. Very true, though.
Lucky you found it.
Yeah, we found it. We found it. It's not that there's one right way, wrong way. It's just that it becomes this opportunity to look at what's going to fill my boots, and nearly always there's an element of service to someone else.
It's a real opportunity to find your way.
It is.
What that's really authentic, like it is an opportunity, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And look, some people combine doing this in their working life. But again, it doesn't have to be volunteer work. It could be looking after the grandkids 1 or 2 days a week to reduce childcare costs for your adult children. Could be looking after great-grandchildren. It could be you walk dogs for the local neighbours that are full-time workers and it's really just to stop them yapping all day. But, yeah, you volunteer and you walk their dogs, right?
You still got a tick for purpose.
Yeah, you still got a tick for purpose. But it's nearly always got this element of service.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're all hardwired to do. We are hardwired to live in the service of others. It can just look different for each person.
I think it's a good point that you made earlier about sort of paying attention to what makes you feel happy at work. And if you are still in the position where you are working and you haven't been surprised, redundant or whatnot, but if you are at work, starting to pay attention to list down the things that make you feel good, because in the wash of the day, you can sort of forget what parts of the job that you like and that you don't like. When I was sort of working out if I wanted to have a career change, I kept a diary at the end of something that and I'd check out on how my energy was feeling.
Yep.
So after a one-on-one chat with my team, I felt like my energy felt really good. If I was on a team group meeting where nothing was established or fixed, my energy would be like zero. If I had some time to think really creatively and do really creative work and something that I'm proud of, my energy would be really high. If I was just answering emails, very low. And I could sort of see, and some of the stuff that I thought would give me energy didn't, and I was surprised by that. Then I managed to sort of kind of narrow down the stuff that I was enjoying rather than just having the whole experience of being at work wash over me. When you kind of break down the day-to-day activities, you can see what's making you happy and what's not making you happy.
And just a suggestion around this, Steph, for people listening, if they find it hard to first identify the things they like doing, sometimes in this instance it's easy to start with the things you don't
yes,
like.
Rule a few things out.
That can come out for, it's just, I struggle with not the positivity, but what I do like. Just start with what you don't. And almost what you're left with, just as a starting point to build some momentum in that process.
Yeah, and then if you find, for example, that talking to people and helping them one-on-one, as I did, which is actually kind of, in a sense, how I came into some of the consulting work I did.
Yeah.
It's like
now you're a financial expert.
That is not what I'd call it. But you, the one-on-one meetings and talking to people, and people had ideas, and then I talked to them about their ideas. That gave me such a boost. And then I went to consulting. I really enjoyed it. But that was not necessarily something that I expected or would have known had I not paid attention. So
this paying attention, I think, is a great tip. And some people are very self-aware, and other people need to carve out a bit of time to develop that. So the second question then, if we've worked out meaning and purpose, what are the activities? The second thing is to then line that up with your values. So if we put it into a question, how do I want to spend my time in retirement in a way that reflects my values? So there's different exercises to help you shape your values, and go online. There's 100 of them, and when you look at how many different values there are, there's one tool I use with a 360-degree review for execs, and it's got 154 values listed to help people narrow down what values they see this particular person in the team having. So there's lots of values, and we can get hung up on semantics. You don't need to do that, but to get an idea about what matters most to you, and then how will you live those in retirement, is a really powerful question to spend some time and energy on.
What's an example of a value?
Well, contribution can be a value. So how will I contribute? And raises the question of who would I contribute to? Another one would be, I'm going to live with honesty. Well, a lot of people are loose with their definition of honesty, and some are very tight with it. But working out what's your definition of honesty and how would you apply that in retirement? Well, let me ask you. Ryan, I'll ask Ryan. Tribeca has values, and we can take them to a personal level. What's one of Tribeca's values that you could see an individual having?
Yeah, well, it's our values for those is respect, innovation, commitment, honesty, and empathy. And one that particularly resonates with me is the commitment piece. I love seeing things committed to the cause. that's a piece that really.
It's funny because
when things get hard,
I
what are we
feel
committed to?
with Tribeca, where I really resonate with you guys, is empathy.
Yeah.
Is that every time I deal with anyone
Yeah.
at Tribeca, there's so much human empathy.
There is, particularly across our tribe, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to volunteer this. That's a learned skill or behaviour for me around empathy. So
And that's why I obviously like really vibe with you guys.
Yeah.
It's because like that one really resonates with me.
So we're going to talk about keys to longevity, research-based keys to longevity in a little while. But one of the things to come out of that is emotional intelligence and emotional flexibility. So there are a couple of the things. But if again, back to the values, if you took commitment as a value, what does commitment look like in retirement? Well, hang on, the main thing I was committed to was my working life. What am I going to be committed to now? You can't just not have commitment. You won't be full. That's one of your values. If you took innovation, perhaps you've had a very innovative career or you've had a leadership, you value yourself as a leader, as a value. Who are you leading now? Your dog? Because I tell you, the one person who doesn't want to be led is your spouse or your partner. Yeah.
You'll be let out the door.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
that's right. You're the one let out to be walked. But, I get reminded all the time that the skills that I have in my working life are not the skills that I need to have when I come home.
Yeah.
Right? They're not paying for consulting fees. They don't want to be consulted. They just want to be lived with and loved and nurtured and all those other things. So working out where your work skills and what was powerful for you in work, how do you translate those values into a post-paid work life? And, perhaps a tip around that is boundaries.
Really?
Yeah, boundaries. It's very easy to retire and lose the disciplines that you had when you were working. You got up at the same time every day. Very powerful driver of energy is maintaining getting up at the same time every day, not just sleeping in until you feel that there's something you have to get up and do. Boundaries around who does what at home. Where does my role start and finish, and where does your role start and finish, and where do we share? Boundaries over your new hobbies, loves, or interests. How many times a week can you play golf? All the things that your partner, perhaps who was working or perhaps not working, all the things they put off until you finished working, when are we going to do them? When's the big trip? When's the lap around Australia in the caravan? When's the big Europe trip? When's the setting timeframes for those over 3, 4, 5 years? Gives everyone a picture of, yep, they're coming up. Gives them something to look forward to. Gives them optimism. Gives them creativity, where we're going to go, when we're going to do. Really powerful stuff to bring some boundaries into shaping what you're going to do. Knowing that, like a good fence on a farm, right? A boundary is a fence, but a good fence can flex when the cattle lean on it. If it's too tight, it'll snap. And then you haven't got a separation of paddocks, right? You haven't got a boundary. So we don't want boundaries that are too rigid. That's not fun in life. We need flexible boundaries, ones you talk about, revisit, renegotiate from time to time.
I think there's also a lot to be said about recognising that it's a transition period and it's not always going to be smooth sailing. For all the preparation, for all the work, for all that you know what you're doing, there will be a spot of rough road, probably.
There will be, yep. And that's why when we look at this Odyssey planning and the 3 plans you'll create, you'll see how that plays out. Let's get to the third question. The third question is, what energises me, excites me and drains me? And if we put that in a retirement or pre-retirement discussion, what activities will energise me in retirement and what should I avoid because they drain me? So that's Ryan's list of what didn't I like, what don't I value, what don't I want to do. Good, have that list. Yep. And then over on this page, what are the things that do fill me up? Like you were saying in your work, it was the leading the team. It was meetings where there was outcomes and actions. So where can you get that? And it's okay. It is seriously okay to have false starts. Like the false start retirement's a very common one. A person retires at 62, year and a half out of the workforce. Before they know it, they're doing some other job at 63 and a half.
Yeah, someone
Why?
gives them a good offer or...
Well, sometimes it's a good offer. Sometimes they're doing it for 25, 30% of the
Working-
pay
working
they had
the
in
post
their
office.
working life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So my brother Kevin, my oldest brother, Kevin retired at 55. He had a melanoma scare, and he said, if we survive this, I'm going to retire. And true to his word, he did. Now, Kevin said in retirement, after about 2 years of retirement, he said, I finally worked out what I wanted to do when I grew up, retire. He never really found that full love in work. And yet
Yeah.
he's very successful and had good careers, but he never really found the thing that filled him up. In retirement, him and his wife, Susan, travelled. They went to all the kids' sports, and then later the grandkids. They were at all the grandkids' junior sports. And, you know, it's such an important thing to find those activities that you want to do and just plan your life around them. Kevin, unfortunately, passed away, and we had his funeral in the last week. And he was 72. He died of
too young.
pancreatic cancer and complications, and only 8 weeks after he was diagnosed. If there's anything, you know, that we can take, there's more than one thing we can take, but something we can really take from Kevin's life is that he retired at 55, died at 72. He had 17 years of brilliant, wonderful retirement spent with his wife, Susan, taking the whole family on holidays to Fiji, Bali, other places, Club Med and all these sorts of things. And literally, you know, one of the things his wife, Susan, said to me last week, and this was one of the first hard moments for her, I had to push my shopping trolley today for the first time in 17 years.
Oh, that's so sad. Yeah. Yeah.
But what a great 17 years they had, because they worked out what they valued. They had financially planned to be in a position to have freedom. You know, we talk at Tribeca about financial well-being, having a sense of security and having a feeling of freedom to make choices. Well, they lived a retirement life that had both of those things. They had sense of security over their financial position, but they had the feeling of freedom that really they didn't have a constraint that held them back from doing things that aligned to their values, time with family, family getaways. They did it well. So we can take lots of lessons from that.
I mean, I'm so sorry about your brother. It's just tragic, but what a life-affirming story in so many ways, because 17 years of really good living is 17 years more than a lot of people give themselves.
Correct. Now, Kevin nearly had the false start.
Yes.
And my brother, he really did enjoy his wine. And about 2.5 years into retirement, he rang me one day, because at that stage I was his financial advisor. And he rang me and said, I'm thinking about taking a part-time job. And I said, why are you doing that? He said, look, it's something that interests me, and I've got the time to do it, and I think it'd have a bit of flexibility. And I said, all right, well, okay, what is it? He said, well, and he's got this beautiful little bottle shop that was close to home, you know, in the middle of a suburb, just a small bottle shop that did really good wine. He said, the bottle shop, they want someone to work 3 or 4 days a week, you know, half days. And I said, Kev, this is not a good decision. You know, you wouldn't let a druggie loose in the chemist shop, would you? I mean, Kev working in the bottle shop.
I thought that might be the analogy.
I don't know what he'd get. If he got paid $30 an hour, he'd spend $50 an hour. This is not going to...
That's a great deal for them, though.
It would have been. I thought it was an investment decision by them. But anyway, we talked Kev out of that, and he didn't do that false retirement. But what did he do after that? Well, he became the treasurer of East Fremantle Bowling Club. He saw them through a massive redevelopment with huge financial support from council and government being one, blending it with the East Fremantle Football Club, Croquet Club and others to create what's called the East Fremantle Community Club, all new facilities and, an amazing, successful period leading that club. And, you know, there was 80 bowlers lined up in their coloured bowls uniforms that is...
They sung the club song?
They sung the club song for him and Kevin, as his last gift to the bowling club, his wake delivered about a $10,000 bar bill. So everyone wins.
They weren't serving pots; they only served pints.
Oh, that's like amazing! What a way to go out! And I mean, and again, such a sign of a life well lived.
Yeah.
Because like if you retire well and you think about this stuff, like they might be the fact that your brother said that he was born to retire is beautiful. And like
Yeah.
you did, that was obviously the 17
Yep.
best years of his life when he's spending time with his wife and his kids.
Yep. And
This is why it matters.
Yeah, and it's not like he'd had a bad life up till then, but
No.
this was the golden era. And it, it's not all about being in big sporting clubs and those sorts of things. It can be you're in a book club, you're in a dog walking club, you could join a crochet network. You could. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you are building human connection, and we'll get to why that matters when we talk about longevity. But we've got to stay connected, and if we take maybe a working life word into retirement world, you've got to stay relevant to people that matter to you. And that means you've got to keep growing, you've got to keep learning, you've got to keep participating.
So just on this, Steph, so Brad, so for those people who are in their 50s, say they're 55 and they're thinking about this, there's an element of bravery too, isn't there? Because I imagine a lot of what else is, they've got friends who are working or looking at 67, the natural retirement age, whatever you want to call it. But let's not skip over. There is an element of bravery in this, being honest, like being true to yourself and your family, right?
Yeah, there is, Ryan. What I've seen is that there's a real spiritual freeing up that comes at some point when you stop living your life under the expectations that others have given to you about your life, and you've unfortunately adopted and placed on yourself as well.
Yeah.
When we let go of expectations, we get a whole lot more freedom and self-satisfaction and opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people feel they can't do that until they've got a financial base to give them the freedom. The reality is we can do it at any time.
Yeah.
Yep, having a financial base is lovely, and I recommend it.
Yeah.
But it's not essential to letting go of the expectations of the world and others and living in your own space.
It's interesting you bring that up too, because I've just got a working contention from what we see from our clients that a lot more people could retire earlier than they actually think.
Yes.
There's a bit in that, I know.
Look, 100% agree, right?
Yeah.
And this is why, where my passion around this is getting stronger and stronger all the time is because it's the phase I'm in, the pre-retirement phase. How do I get ready? How do I know? How do I plan? And way too many people don't go and seek the guidance or the help to do it. They would over their health, but they won't over their financial health. And it's not one without the other. These things are all interconnected. Having a sense that you've got a financial plan delivers a greater sense of security, and it may well let you choose to bring the feeling of freedom that comes with retirement forward by years.
I love what you said as well about how people get to live without expectations, and as you said, you can do this at any point, but I think probably more for men maybe, the feeling that you are carrying the family expectation of what it is. How many blokes do you know who retired from high-powered jobs and then had the best time of their lives working in Bunnings, just helping people out? Like how many happy retired blokes do you know, or retired inverted commas blokes, just working at Bunnings giving advice? Or my favourite one, I was at the Train Museum a couple of weekends ago in Bathurst.
Pardon?
Yes, I know. Yes, as one does. I was in Bathurst for the 12-hour car race, and when you're in Bathurst for the 12-hour, like you may as well just check out the Train Museum.
Yeah,
What
sure.
a Bathurstian does.
I loved it so much because it was obviously a nice place for people to visit. It was tourism, but I was also like, this is having a civic purpose because that just keeps all of Bathurst's retired men a place to go. And you just see these guys honestly probably doing what they wanted to do more than anything. There's this enormous model train track that goes, it's huge, it's bigger than a house, and it's beautifully maintained by a bunch of retired blokes who are making these model trains and then maintaining the trains, building more tracks. And they're there 2 or 3 days a week. They hang out with each other. They'll go and talk to people about the trains and what they're doing. And I'm like, this is like an adult playground.
Yeah.
These guys are just so happy they're living their best life. And I'm like, that is just...
And I don't reckon there's a lot of regret there. So I think, and to your question or point earlier, Steph, people who retire, is there a lot of regret? I'd suggest no. I think the challenge or the problem to solve, people don't think it's possible. Like,
Yeah.
I'm 45. I was talking with a mate, played the old boys golf day down Geelong Way, and we're just driving down, and he's the same age as me, and we talked about retirement or what it would look like. 4 kids under 16. And I said, well, what about and he just, I don't think it's possible. And then he caught himself and he went, well, it could be if I did this, and he's highly intelligent, this, and this. He changed, not he
Like
hadn't
that.
changed, but his first response was a contrarian, no. Then he went, well, I could if I did this, and therefore it went to a choice.
Yeah.
That's the conversation we want to continue to have with people.
And that's such a powerful stage when you realise you're working by choice and not by necessity.
Yeah.
That's a great turning point. And again, how do you get that turning point? Well, you do the numbers, or you get someone to work with you, do the numbers, do the modelling.
Yeah.
So I guess if we take those 3 questions about meaning and purpose, how do you live your values, and then what energises me, excites me, what's going to fill me up, right? Take those 3 things. We are talking here about a period of adaptation. We're talking about identity shift. And this is the toughest one. So often we get really caught up in the identity that exists in our working life. And then when we're retiring, who am I now? What am I going to be? Now, it's not that you have to lose the identity of what you were when you were working, but you do need to keep letting it grow and evolve, right? A leader in the workplace, like my brother Kevin was, is still going to be a leader at the East Fremantle Bowling Club, right? He's not going to lose the trait.
I love that you mentioned this, and I'm sure your other brother, Steve, will be okay with you mentioning it, but we were talking at the wake, and he said, Ryan, and I know he's trying to teach me something, he said, Ryan, in all the speeches, how much do they mention Kevin's work? I knew what he was getting at. And he goes, I said, not much. I said, they might have introduced what he did. He goes, yeah, but it didn't define him, did it? Like there wasn't much mention of the work. It was the person he was and how he contributed, to your point.
Yeah. So this shift in identity, it's we've just got to be open to it. Mm-hmm. We're not a finished product at any point of our life. Not at any point. Good old my dad, 96, he's still evolving who he is, his next phase, because the world changes. Like he wrote his first book and released it when he was 94, I think it was, right? And he called it his first book, right?
Yeah.
He's still on computers, on an iPhone all the time. He just had my wife help him work out how to use MyGov on his phone, right? He's not giving in that the world's leaving him behind. He continues to reinvent and evolve. So we're not a finished product at any stage. Our identity continues to grow if we allow it to. And we should get on to really what the 3 plans are that we're going to do under Odyssey planning, right?
Yes, we definitely have to get to that.
All right. So the purpose here is to create 3 alternative realities of your next 5 years. Now, you could extend it to 10 years if you wanted to, but 5 years most people find comfortable. So what are these 3 alternative realities that could all be your outcome, right? And the first one is the expected path. So if you keep doing the things you're doing, the things you've already thought about, map them out. What does that look like as a retirement life? Or if you're 2 years off retirement, the 2 years into retirement, the 3 years after. So what's the expectations you have, knowing what you know, being who you are? Pretty predictable.
Status quo.
More or less the status quo, yeah. And you can put across each of the 5 years, what's the milestone in year 1, what's the milestone year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, if you wanted to put it on a sheet, which is a good idea. Thing is, you're not locked into this, right? These are alternative pathways. You're not wedded to them. They're not an anchor around your neck. They can change. You can keep evolving them. It's to reignite your imagination. But the first one is just imagining what the status quo delivers us. The second one's where it gets interesting. The second one encourages us to imagine an outcome where we're disrupted. So this is the alternative path where things haven't turned out as planned. The unexpected has happened. And what's the unexpected? Well, there's not one unexpected. There's lots of unexpected. So it could be I'm 2 years off retirement and instead I get made redundant.
And we know significant life event every 36 months, right, Foxy?
Significant life event.
It happens.
Yep. So of some type or other. It could be anything. It could be divorce. It could be the loss of your partner. It could be a significant health event. It could be you win bloody tats lotto. It could be you get a promotion and decide not to retire. It could be that you were going to sell the business, but now something's gone wrong. You've got to retain the business. It could be the opposite. I never thought I'd be able to sell the business, but someone comes along and offers me $3 million for it. These are the alternative pathways, and you craft that out. What does that look like now? Good one, bad one. Doesn't have to be just one. Again, the purpose here is that if the expected path disappeared tomorrow, what would we do instead? Yep. So most people will cast a negative of some sort over this. What would we do instead? Again, I'll use a family example. Dad had 2 types of super. I mentioned he had a defined benefit scheme, which goes up every year with CPI and locked in guaranteed money from the government. Second one he had was his personal super. He retired about a month before the October 1987 stock market crash, where the value of most people's super halved, right? So,
Yep.
So he experienced both, right? Unexpected outcome. Well, if you've mapped out an alternative path for it and it happens, you're half prepared to step through it. Okay? So that's the alternative path. That's the second one. The third one, and this is the one that most people find most difficult because it needs the most imagination, which is one of the levers they haven't pulled or pushed in their life for a while. This is the wildcard path. Let go the restrictions. Okay, let go the expectations that everyone else has placed on you about who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to live. Let go of the financial limitations that you've talked yourself into believing. Let all that go and draw up a wildcard path. What would that look like? Doesn't that sound like fun?
That does sound like fun.
Yeah.
So for some people, it might be like, all right, well, I liquidate all my assets and I buy a ticket on a cruise ship that just ticks over every single year and I just float around on the high seas seeing stuff.
Nice.
Wildcard.
Yeah,
you can
absolutely.
do it. It might not be for everyone and you don't have to do it.
Don't have to do it.
You don't
That's
have to do
the
it, just
beauty
to
of
get to
this.
think about it.
Yeah.
What it really is actually is an exercise in being able to expand your mind. Because a lot of people get stuck in their immediate reality, but you need to actually see that there are, because we do the same thing over and over and over again, and we forget that there are actually an infinite number of things that could happen or we could do that could completely change the outcome of our lives, but we just blinker ourselves.
100% correct. And that's why this is Odyssey planning.
Yeah.
Odyssey being the word for journey.
Yes.
Journey planning. And there is no journey you're going to plan for your retirement that plays out exactly the way you expect. Life doesn't give us that amount of certainty. We live in an uncertain world. Lots of things change for good and for bad. What this sort of exercise does is help prepare you to envision different pathways, different outcomes, so you free up your mind to different possibilities. And I mean, I can hear plenty of my mates in their 50s that would be hearing me say this and go, Foxy, come on, what have you been smoking?
Well, don't you get you get a temperature check every Tuesday, don't you, at Fisher's Bar?
Yeah,
So,
well, we do have
yeah.
a group of guys that
Yeah.
keep each other real. And they
Yeah.
would be saying, look, what have you been imagining? Why wouldn't I imagine something that's never going to happen? Because it might shift your expected outcome closer to what you imagine to give you more than you ever thought you were going to get.
Yeah. I honestly think I'm one of these slightly woo-woo people, but I genuinely think that what you expect of yourself is what will happen.
Yeah.
And if you expand out, then you get closer and closer
Yeah.
to who you are. And then the greatest sort of tragedy, I think, is people don't get to find their own limits because we box ourselves in and there's actually...
Well, we pretty much play safe, don't we, most of the
We do,
time?
yeah.
And, you know, the name of my business, right, is Smart, Brave Consulting. It's how do you make smart but brave decisions? How do you expand the range of possibilities and hunt after it? Always protect your downside, sure.
Yeah.
Right? But here we're not just, please, anyone listening to this, do not just limit this to thinking about finance. This is not about the money.
Yeah.
Right? This is about the mental freedom to do the things you want to do, the way you want to do them, with the people that you love, the people you want to add value to, which is going to then bring us to a discussion about longevity and what actually works about living a longer, healthier life, which has to be one of the ultimate goals of retirement, surely.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, how do we live a longer, happier life?
Well, the science is really simple. Lots and lots of research on this. And the study I'll talk mostly about is the Harvard study of adult development. Harvard study of adult development. It began in the 1940s. It's a longitudinal study of people from entry into the program, which is usually around teenage years, through until death. Right, so this is long-term data. It's currently overseen by Dr. Robert Waldinger and Dr. Mark Schultz. They're the current directors of it because, of course, the same director can't be leading it. He wouldn't be around these days, right? So they keep adding information. They keep re-examining what are they learning out of this. And you can take this study, you can take a whole bunch of others. The number one thing that's going to give you happiness and longevity in your life, drum roll.
I'm ready.
It's being connected with other people.
Yeah, there's no surprises, right?
Yeah, it's having a community. And what comes from community is the feeling that you've got support, that there is trust, and that you belong. That you matter to someone. So this is to the meaning and purpose piece. We are hardwired to live in the service of others and to live in the company of others. And when we maintain that, everything opens up. There's activities, there's things to do, there's a reason to get up. Now, my dad lives, one of his decisions when Mum passed away, Mum was young, she was only 75 when she passed away, so Dad was 78. And you mentioned gardening. Mum's thing was the garden. Dad's thing was not the garden. So after a year, he went, I'm not going to be able to maintain this, I don't really want to. Sold up, went to a retirement village, bought a 3-bedroom place, and it's been the most wonderful thing for him. It was walking distance to the bowling club. It's got lots of other people living in there. They have happy hour one night a week where they all get together in the community hall and, buy their, I think it's $2 wines and $5 beers. And, they have a raffle, but they catch up, right? So there's a reason. That's something to do on Wednesday. There's dog walking group on Thursday. There's this group on Friday. There's the book club on Saturday. And you don't have to be in any of them. So I think if we go, the number one key to longevity is relationships with others, and they need to be strong and supportive, and we must nurture them. This is the part we can forget. Like this plant next to me here, right? Good relationships need to be looked after. They need to be fed, they need to be watered, they need to be nurtured. Sometimes they need to be pruned. It's a reality that they're a living thing and we need to give them care and attention. And throughout the course of life, some friendships will, in some cases, regrettably, go and new ones will form. But we need to keep finding ways to connect and be with other people. So that's number one. That, of course, is driven by emotional intelligence. So how do we coexist? How do we get along? How do we have empathy? The second thing, and again, this is from the study, we need purpose, meaning, and long-term perspective. So if I dumb that down, what's all that mean? It means emotional and mental health. Right? So we need emotional and mental health, which is driven by our emotional agility, the ability to keep adapting, the ability to deal with a setback. If I summed it up in one word, it's optimism. Those with optimism were the ones that were alive year after year after year. They kept adapting to the world. They kept seeing opportunities. And again, they're not constrained by finances. If their finances are small, they find opportunities within that. They find things to be optimistic about, an activity coming up, something that's on next year, someone's 80th birthday, whatever it might be. So having that optimism and the mental agility to keep adapting is the number 2 guide to living happy and long.
What's the number 3?
Number 3 is physical health. So, of course, we don't want to hurt too much and we want to be able to get around. Thing is, it's a much lower contributor to longevity and happiness than we actually think, right? If you've got the emotional adaptability, you adapt to what the world gives you as a physical or health outcome.
You can eat the golden foods.
Correct.
Excellent.
Right? So we learn to get on top of health, and of course science keeps us helping. The number 4 thing is avoiding the trap of overwork or isolation. So even in retirement, some people over-volunteer. They exhaust themselves, run themselves ragged. But the one that often comes alongside that is isolation. And if I give you a quote on that, this is from Robert Waldinger, the study director. Loneliness kills. It's as powerful as smoking or alcoholism in shortening your life.
Brad, you have given us so much information. I'm not close to retirement age, but there's stuff there that anyone at any age should be thinking about. Like we are talking about this in terms of retirement, but I think that taking stock of your life where it is now, whether or not you're thinking about it, is always valuable. And there's so much there to consider. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. And for anyone that wants to tackle this, we nearly always need a coach or someone to help lead us through the conversation. And, you know, it just helps you see the world broader with a little bit of guidance. So reach out to someone that can help you do that, whether it's Tribeca Financial or email me.
Beautiful. And if you enjoyed this episode, do make sure you follow Money and a Good Life wherever you're listening now so you don't miss an episode. We'll see you next time. Advice given in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to influence decisions about investing or financial products. Our listeners should always seek their own professional advice that considers their own personal circumstances before making any financial decisions.